We're glad you joined us. I'm Scott Hayes. So joining me today is Abhik Paul, who heads up our Road Mapping Center of Excellence. And today we're going to be talking about creating an ROI-based roadmap for your SAP estate. So welcome, Abhik. Let's get right into it. So most SAP clients are still running ECC 6, Business Suite 7, and we all know that mainstream support is scheduled to end at the end of 2027, and that's less than 5 years away. And in SAP time, that's not very long. So with S/4HANA and its suite of solutions as the next version, most companies are, they're being asked to migrate by SAP. And I'd like to know kind of what is the SAP situation like for companies and their ERP strategy. What are you hearing from your vantage point in your office, Abhik?
Yeah, sure, Scott. Thanks for the quick intro. So companies with SAP as their ERP of choice, the situation is indeed a complex one, to say the least. Firstly, will SAP actually end the ECC support in 2027, as you just referred to? Remember, we are asking that as a question because SAP has already moved the date back from 2025 once.
Right.
If precedents are anything to go by, the current date of 2027 deadline may or may not stick despite SAP's insistence. So that's why we are saying what we are saying. The second thing which we want to talk about is, as we speak, there is 70% of the customers who still remain on ECC. So there's a vast majority of SAP customers who still do not have plans of moving to S/4HANA at all, or their plan is yet to be formed. Okay. Two things stand out in this context. One is that how costly the migration itself is. A simple example, which is based on our experience, to put it in that context, would be that if you have a company of the $1 billion size revenue, that company needs around a minimum of $5 million to do a brownfield and $10 million to do a greenfield implementation into S4. So that's a pretty costly migration. And
can you quickly, I'm sorry to interrupt, can you quickly just explain brownfield and greenfield for the audience?
Yeah, brownfield means where you do a technical upgrade, and you take that way of doing a migration, or greenfield means doing a functional transformation right from scratch. So those are the two differences, which is why brownfield lends itself to less effort and less time and even cost, and greenfield is a much more costlier time and effort. Okay.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Yeah, and functionally, S/4HANA has not yet broken any new ground vis-a-vis ECC in terms of pure functionalities available in both the systems. Of course, there are new capabilities, new next-gen solutions and all, which are available as a part of the S/4HANA portfolio, but they may or may not necessarily be central to most companies' needs. Okay. In terms of the availability of support extension for companies who are on ECC, they do have the date of 2030. In the sense that you can pay for a 3% increase in real terms or a 13% uplift. And it still might be something which most companies might look for, especially if they're on ECC, because it is cheaper than doing this replatforming exercise or the S/4HANA implementation, as we just talked about how costly it is. So ECC companies might bite the support extension bullet and extend life by another 3 years, definitely.
Okay.
Or if they are even smarter, they might look at third-party, more efficient support options. Like, for example, Rimini Street, we can provide support on ECC for the next 10 to 15 years at a much cheaper and possibly viable option than SAP. Okay. Last but not the least, in this context, when we say S4, it is not one. We are talking of 3 options within S4. Like, for example, S4 on-prem, S4 on private cloud, and S4 on public cloud. Currently, older customers on S4 have migrated on-prem to the on-prem version. Newer customers are almost being asked to move to the private cloud, and they are doing so. And very few are on the public cloud. And when SAP is offering the RISE option, which they have started offering for the public and the private cloud for S4, it is basically a subscription model with bundled cloud hosting option with no other alternatives. From this year onwards, the on-prem is less on the table. It is mostly RISE with the cloud model. So when I use the word complex, to sum up, that's why we were saying that the ERP situation for companies on ECC and their future roadmap is indeed so.
Absolutely. And you were just a few minutes in, and already my head's spinning with all of the variables that an SAP practitioner needs to deal with and think about and consider. So, what I would like to do is help them know how to take a really deep look at all of the costs and benefits, that create an ROI based plan, so that they can get the board approval for that. Isn't that really what we're after?
Yeah, true. Yeah. The roadmap to S4 is complex, as we already talked about, and that's why Rimini Street takes a client-centered, a vendor-agnostic, and a data-based approach to these SAP roadmap strategies. Rimini breaks down the roadmap to S4 actually into 9 considerations that need to be catered to before culminating into a business case or an ROI-based plan, as you were referring to. So let's
Wow.
quickly take a look at those 9 considerations. It is often referred to as phase 0 of an S4 roadmap. And it has, as days go by, it has become more or less mandatory in more ways than one. Okay. So we start with number one. One needs to be very clear about which S4 option to avail. You are already aware that we talked about S4 on-prem, S4 private cloud, public cloud. The pros and cons of each have to be duly weighed out, and you need to make that decision. Number two, clarity on the migration strategy itself. We are again referred to brownfield, greenfield. There is something called bluefield also for a single instance, CFIN for multiple instances. So one needs to ascertain through an in-depth study of these areas and what should be a correct migration strategy. Number three, what is your customization carry forward strategy? Does it involve checking on whether you're even utilizing your current customizations, ability to configure them in the newer platform, or simply use a migration cockpit to move it because it gives you a specific business value which is not covered by standard S4?
We'll take this in batches of 3. So that's 1, 2, 3. But that customization one can't be minimized. We recently heard at SAP Sapphire that they're really encouraging their clients to go with clean core or to run standard, and they're really kind of denigrating customizations entirely. But we know from our experience with SAP clients that those customizations are very important to their competitive advantage, their industry processes. So we don't want to just leave those behind in many cases, but an astute review of them is important. And I suggest, I guess, that you would help them understand what to do with their customizations and how to review them.
Absolutely. In fact, that is why I use the term that if the customization is bringing specific business value and not covered by standard S4, then you need to go for it. And we have to enable the companies to make that decision and take it forward. So while it is a good thing not to carry customizations forward to keep a cleaner environment and make them amenable to upgrades and likewise, but sometimes it is indeed a necessary fact of life and which we need to acknowledge. So it is on a case-by-case basis. Absolutely.
All right, let's do 4 to 6.
Yeah, so number 4, before we get into the S4 nitty-gritties, one should prepare an opportunity list of the processes at the process level, mostly to say. So you can check on what are the processes you're going to enhance, which ones are you going to migrate as it is, which of the new solutions, new capabilities you are going to leverage. And even if you're going to renovate, you are using this opportunity to renovate some of your erstwhile processes. So you have to make that opportunity list, and that should be part of your S4 roadmap as possibly number 4. Number 5 is you can or you should look at innovative approaches to upgrade. One is where you can directly upgrade with the migration strategy. That's done. But then there are some innovative ways, like, for example, the second one is you do an ECC optimization in your current environment and then do a brownfield migration. So this eases the life for you in terms of the upgrade itself, because you will definitely be able to pull it off with a brownfield as opposed to a costly greenfield migration. So that's an innovative approach. Number 6 would be what we call as time-based approach. It is essentially where 2025 is one date where you're looking, if you want to start now, finish everything by 2025, or you can work backwards from the 2 dates which are looming for ECC customers, 2027 when the support is supposed to peter out from SAP, or 2030, which is the extended support plan. So you can work backwards and you do your implementation plan accordingly. So this is what we call as a time-based approach.
And that's an interesting one. I mentioned in the intro about SAP time. There's going to be some interesting challenges in the next 4.5 years as we head toward that date, and clients plan these projects. I predict even that there's going to be a shortage of SAP, ECC, and S/4HANA resources that really know what they're doing and haven't already committed to somebody else for a project. I think there's going to be really a land rush for that. And so another option is to wait, buy yourself some time like you can with Rimini Street support, and then 2027, 2030, it's just not an issue. We'll extend that support well after that, and then you can move when it's the right time for your business. All right, let's head into numbers 7, 8, and 9.
Sure, Scott. Okay, so number 7 is the business case, something which we were referring to, the ROI-based business case. So we need to make sure that for the options and everything that was elaborated between 1 to 6, you by now know which strategy, which way you are going, which approach you are taking. So prepare the business case for it by looking at the cost, the benefit, the ROI, and the payback. It can be done over a 7-year to 10-year periods, depending on what is comfortable for the company. But you need to prepare the business case, and that is pretty mandatory before getting into any of the S4 implementations whatsoever. And at number 8, it's a corollary to number 7. It is basically the ROI which you derived in the business case. You can use that as a decision matrix. So if it is a positive ROI, then pretty much go ahead. Your business case is kind of made. Prepare a project and a resource plan and do the budgeting accordingly and go ahead with your S4 roadmap. If it is a negative ROI though, then you should have an alternative strategy, which of course we can elaborate on, like ERP optimizations and likewise in your current environment. And you should prepare the project and resource plan for the same. So there should be an alternate strategy definitely for a negative ROI. And last but not the least, which is number 9, when we are doing all these roadmap exercises, it should consider the entire SAP ecology of the solution suite, which is there. It should include, like, for example, solution manager or GRC, enterprise portal, all the things which you use as a part of your SAP ecology of system solutions or ERP solutions, so to say. So that sums up the 9 considerations for a roadmap. Yep.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Abhik. It does absolutely look very logical and well laid out. I want to dig in a little bit more on that ROI-based plan. That's number 8, and your S4 roadmap considerations. What's involved, and how does one understand the costs and the benefits in that?
The ROI-based plan involves, as we laid out, the cost, the benefit, ROI, and payback. So these are the 4 parameters which are very central to an ROI-based plan to determine the financial feasibility of the S4 upgrade and migration. So if you notice, cost is the first element that has to be determined, and it has to answer the element of cost based on the first 6 considerations which we talked about in our 9. So if you have figured those out, then you can pretty much find out the cost for your S4 option or options chosen. And you can calculate it with the resource plan, with the timeline and effort to handle the project cost, whether it's internal or external. And normally people use Activate or a hybrid methodology for the implementation. So these are the parameters under which the cost can be calculated. So that's how you start on the ROI calculations. Yep.
And that's probably the more straightforward part. Then there's the benefits. How do you go about calculating that?
Yeah, the benefits can really get tricky. That's true. Because SAP, for example, uses 10 to 15 KPIs, the key process indicators, and the ability of the digitized S4 processes to move the needle of improvement on those KPIs. And what they do is they have a range between 10 to 30% across the KPIs in terms of improvement. One additional factor which people can also consider is labor productivity improvement that should be added, logically speaking, to this effort. Okay. But in practical terms, getting labor details from companies by process areas can get challenging. So a lot of people drop that out just simply because of that. But otherwise, that's the standard method of doing it. In Rimini, we have developed on the business benefits in a slightly more involved way. So here is what we do. We have a list of around 100 business KPIs, which are meant for the business vertical. Like, for example, if you're in a process manufacturing industry with perishable foods, we have 100 business KPIs for you. We have discrete manufacturing, engineering parts industry, there's another 100 KPIs for you. Then we dig deeper and we have standard KPIs, which are applicable to every functional area as per industry standards. And when we do map out the opportunities for a given implementation, then we map or we see which opportunity affects which KPI directly or indirectly in a favorable way. And then for every KPI, we multiply the KPI value, which is interpreted in dollar terms for order to cash by sales revenue, for purchasing areas in inventory cost. For example, in plan to produce, we use raw material cost. So we use all these parameters, and then we use a percentage of improvement. Normally, we are much more conservative vis-a-vis SAP. We take conservative values between 1 to 5%. And then we also use what is called a benefit factor, which is just to account for that your implementation was successful and you're indeed applying and adopting those processes or using those processes. And we have a 1% assigned to that just as a benefit factor. So if you do it, all these exercise by process, especially on the opportunity list, then you get a benefit. And if you aggregate all the opportunities across all these opportunities for a project, you get the total benefit for the project, and you can also get it by the module. So in a way, it's pretty detailed, scientific, data-based, and it withstands any scrutiny. So yes, costs and benefit, once you lay them over a time scale period of 7 to 10 years, depending on what the company is comfortable. Then you match the implementation timings in that. Normally, costs for a one-time implementation will be high, followed by lower ongoing support. The benefits will be yearly. With full benefits, we normally realize it a year or two after implementation. We wait for the implementation to kind of mature. Then one can calculate the cumulative costs and cumulative benefits over that time period of 7 to 10 years. And once you have done that, then you can derive the calculation of net benefits, which is simply done by subtracting cumulative costs from the cumulative benefits. And where at the time point where you find the net benefits become positive, that is what we call as the break-even year or the payback year from then on. The ROI is just a simple financial calculation of final year cumulative benefits divided by final year cumulative costs. It is expressed in percentage terms. So if you have a positive ROI, your business case is made. So please feel free to proceed on the S4 roadmap with project and a resource plan. That's how it works.
The positive ROI, that's what most people would expect. In fact, this term of negative ROI, you hardly even hear. So what happens then? It's not the end of the road. What do you do with that information?
Yeah, it does not definitely mean end of the road by any means whatsoever. It means basically that the S4 replatforming, which you're thinking of, is actually a financially unviable one. Instead, one can do alternative strategy of optimizing your current ECC from where it is. And then also, as an option B, look for non-SAP solutions or selected options from the S4 suite, and not the entire S4 HANA itself, but pick and choose elements like IBP or GTS, which will work with your ECC environment. So when Rimini does a roadmap for S4, it tables the alternative strategy option should your ROI be negative, and we do it in detail. The client, of course, has the prerogative to decide upon the course of action for the roadmap accordingly.
Well, thanks, Abhik. That does indeed sound like you've got a very sophisticated methodology to capture the costs and benefits, come up with an ROI and a payback. And I would really encourage all SAP clients to consider doing that level of rigor before signing off or engaging in a migration strategy for S/4HANA. There's really so much at stake here. So I would encourage them to do that. Reach out to us. We'd be happy to help with that analysis, or at least provide some guidance on how to do it yourself. So thanks for being with us. Hope this was helpful, and we hope to hear from you soon.